Hey, this is Frugus Raid, and today I'm going to show you how to handle affinity on 2-1 comps. And these are specifically going to be on Marshall-based 2-1 comps. So the team I'm going to show you, I ran this team on Void. This is a setup with a slightly weaker team than my normal team, but I was trying to just play around with some different things. So this is a Skullcrusher for a counterattack based team with Doompriest and Marshall, and then Brago and Rhazin. And my Brago and Rhazin, I took some gear off to get the speeds right, but they're still pretty strong geared, and they did carry the load in this setup. I think they did like 52 million of the 80. I'm going to go ahead now and just go into Clan Boss, and we're going to run this on Affinity. Now, this is set up so that Doompriest will go last early on, but once it sinks, she'll go first. So she is the slowest champion, and what you're going to have to deal with is a few turns of people getting the decreased speed buff or debuff that the clan boss puts on, and that will play a little bit with the speed tune. The speed tune that I'm essentially using, the typical one I would use, has Marshall A2 delaying 1, and that means it will become a 2-1 on turn 7. Because of this, if you use this setup, it doesn't sync till turn 13 or 14. So if you do it this way, it will sync up on turn 9, which is what says here. So it kind of stays on schedule. It does do some shenanigans where Doompriest gets a extra turn on turn 5, so she's unable to cleanse. And as a result of that, there's really no good way, at least with the setup I've got, to keep Skullcrusher on schedule without manualing. So what you're going to see me do is I'm going to run this, and then sometime after turn 5, sometime between turn 6, 7, and 8, I'm going to delay Skullcrusher from casting his A2 by 1 turn. This should, so I'm basically going to start it with either a delay of 0 or 1 with him. He'll take the stun on turn 5, and then afterwards I'll delay it 1 more, and that'll have him on schedule if I delay it 2. If I delay it 1, he won't take the stun on turn 5. Instead, Doompriest will take the stun, and then I'll just delay it by 1. So either way, you're going to see me do a delay of, I'm going to probably do a delay of 0 on him. So the only thing I will delay when I run this, it will be Iron Brago. And then I will manual between 6, 7, 8, 1 turn of Skullcrusher to delay his A2 and get him back on schedule for turn 9 when this sinks. So we'll go ahead and set it up. We're going to go ahead and run it now. So we're going to right away use Marshall's A2. That's going to get the speed boost going. Go ahead and I'm going to just delay Skullcrusher 1 turn, and then we're going to go ahead and use Brago's A2, and now we can auto. Now, as I said, we're going to kind of watch this run. You're going to see the debuffs applied. Doompriest will remove them, but you're going to see that the first couple times through, she doesn't fully remove everything just because of the timing of the run. So you'll see that she's not, first here. So you're going to see a few people go, and quite a few ticks of the turn meter are going to take place before she goes, and that's fine. It'll settle itself out, but it's gonna take a little while. So you can see turn 3, you see Rhazin took the stun. Turn 5, you're going to see Doompriest is typically the one who takes the stun in this setup. So we'll watch that as well, and then we will put Skullcrusher with a delay of 1, then the subsequent turn when he comes up, and get it back on schedule. So I have not used Doompriest in an actual run before this for a 2-1. I did one test drive with her with my other team, but due to the team speeds, I lost defense down and weakened, and it really wasn't a very profitable run. I pretty well discounted it. So this is the first time. Now you can see that this time Doompriest took the stun, and what I'm going to end up having to do is make sure that Skullcrusher delays one more turn here. And so I'm just going to run forward. There we are. And we'll go back to autoing. And this should have him right back on schedule for the sync up on turn 9. So again, we're going to eat the speed buff, or the decreased speed debuff for a while, but again, that shouldn't harm this setup. So we see Rhazin got stunned there. And now turn 9, there we go. Skullcrusher got his buffs up. All right, now we're back on schedule. So you're going to see this run now, and we'll watch one more of his stuns before I kind of let you guys just see this go. I'm going to put it on single speed here. Nope, not yet. We'll let this go just a little longer, but all right, here we go. There's everybody gets one more turn, and then you'll see him hit his AoE, put the slows on everybody. And you see some counterattacks, and then you're going to see Doompriest cleanse it. There we go. She cleared it off, and it's going to follow this cycle. Because I'm using Skullcrusher, this team is going to last on Void. It lasts, 40 to 48 rounds. Clearly at 1-keyed. On this affinity, I highly doubt it'll 1-key with 3 red champions. My expectation is more like a 2-key and staying with like just over 1 million per turn. So if it stays on schedule, it'll be a comfortable 2-key on green affinity. But it gives a picture of the consistency you can achieve with this type of a setup. Depending on the champions you had, you could probably throw some strong champions in here, and you do much better damage-wise. We'll have to see. My expectation is that you can do really good with this type of a setup. Although all in all, if you're only going to have one clan boss team, you might want to follow a setup like this. If you have a second team, or if you are pretty confident that you're usually going to be on Void and you want to run a 2-1, I would advise that you use Alton instead of Doompriest, and I would also advise that you gear down the speeds on Rhazin and Brago, since they are your 1A and 1B DPSers, and typically with Alton, you're either going to probably have Alton or Brago taking the stun in this type of a comp normally. So you want Rhazin to have your absolute best DPS gear, and then whichever one you expect to not take the stun on Void, which is, for me, that's Brago, gets my second best DPS gear. And in this setup, I'm actually running Brago and Toxic, so you can see the poisons popping in too. Now, with the particular setup that I have here, these two do have the best gear in this by a long shot, but the overall damage suffers a little bit because you don't have as much firepower from Alton. I've seen people who have a pretty strong comp with Valkyrie Um, Alton, Brago, and Rhazin and Marshall just hit auto, and even though it's out of sync, even though it's a mess, it's still usually between 35 and 50 million damage, and as a result, it still usually works out without doing this. But if you don't have quite as strong an account, you may, or if you don't have the champions, this may be an option to let you run a 2-1, and especially if you're somebody who happens to have Marshall but does not have Maneater or doesn't have two Maneaters, you might want to go with a setup like this. So I'm going to go ahead and let this run. Once it's done, I'll come around and we'll go through the gear, and then we can wrap this up. Ooh, well, that's too bad. It looks like I got an unfortunate wipe due to not healing up fast enough. Still, you can see this settles in at a pretty comfortable 2 key. We'll go ahead and bounce in, and I'll show you the gear. We'll start with the strongest setup. This is my Rhazin. I did remove some of his crit damage when I bumped up his speed. So I just basically took away his 1 speed chest that crit capped him and replaced it with a speed chest that didn't crit cap him, and that's where he sits. Now I'll just go through the gear for benefit of seeing it. Now let me move on next to Brago. Again with Brago, I made a change to his gear to get the faster speeds. Again, I didn't worry too much about him staying capped. I just went ahead and made the changes. Just bounce through what this gear looks like. And this is what I swapped out, as well as this. So, in any case, you can see again pretty strong gear on him. Total stats in toxic. Now we're going to go ahead and move into my Marshall that I'm using for this test. You're going to see he's at 253. I did gear him in Stalwart. You may notice crit rate gloves. He's not crit capped. You can get really solid damage out of Marshall in a setup like this, though. You know, nearly 100% crit, low critical damage, and 3k attack. You may notice too, in the runs that I've done with him, even with Skullcrusher, he's never the breaking point at 3,000 defense. You know, if you're between 2,800 and 3,200 defense, that's pretty good with him. And then depending on your team setup, you can go down into the 21, 2,200, or you can go up higher. You'll want to adjust the attack and defense correspondingly depending on how much survival your team has and you know where he's dying or not dying. And that's really the key with most of these champions, especially attack-based champions that you put into Stalwart. All right, if I continue on, I will go ahead and pull up, let's see, where's Skullcrusher? I'll pull up Doompriest first, I suppose, then I'll show you Skullcrusher. So Doompriest, very similar setup. I did not give her a tremendous amount of crit damage or anything. She has a little bit more defense, actually, in Stalwart. 33k hit points, 4,200 defense. She is crit capped and 176. This is a good, you know, I'm going to call it a starter build for a 2-1. In a perfect world, your damaging champions especially are going to be over 200 crit damage, and you'll have them in crit damage gloves. You can't, that's in a perfect world. I mean, obviously the damage that I get out of this is a 2 key on green affinity, and on the other affinities it should be a 1 key. So it's very strong. I'm just gonna kind of breeze through the gear so you can see the type of gear and the quality. Since she was at 188, it was not hard for me personally to get her in defense boots. Obviously, if it is hard for that, you could probably still get away with her with 1,000 less defense. I think should be just as effective. So it's, I mean, she's really not there for the damage, and her output, you know, and that showed it. But I did have some real good defense rolls on some of the gear. And since she doesn't need accuracy, I also was able to bolster it like this. So she would be completely fine in speed boots if you have problems getting those speeds. Then lastly, we'll take a look at Skullcrusher. Skullcrusher, not crazy geared, 4,500, 56k at 251. I didn't worry about critical rate and critical damage. That may have bit us on this run, actually, because the clan boss did target him only because he had less than half life. So he was such an appealing target, it knew it could kill him and went after him. But that being said, with ally protect champion like this, I'm mostly focused on giving him, you know, good hit points and good defense, and that's the way I've kind of typically built him. In fact, I even use this hit points since it had a triple crit damage roll. It was pretty favorable. On all of these champs, every single one, I went with, you know, some variant of masteries that get me down in the defense tree and give me a counterattack and also give me blast proof. Those are huge, as is delay death. That's a typical strategy, you know, and then you also get something back from the counterattack as well. You'll get some, you know, just some extra damage. If you look at these champs, you'll see they're pretty much all following that strategy. Same with Marshall. Anyway, I will go ahead and post the speeds for this, and I will also post the setup for this and the setup for this particular team on Void. And in the details, if you have questions or comments, you can certainly leave something below in the comments section, or you can reach out to me on Discord. On the Heart Up Heroes Discord, there's a link for that as well in the description. Have a great day.